Ellen, hello. Oh,
So,
okay.
everybody, welcome to another reading of Lord Meher. Uh, I will call out your names and you all could read, and please be muted while we're reading. And we'll have a short discussion at the end of our uh, reading. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, would you like to start, Marvin?
Okay, you can hear me now?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can.
Okay. All
I
right, we're
will.
up to page 1313. The West learns to sing. Baba had not given up hope of finding the ideal boy, even in America. Brought by his parents, a 12-year-old boy named Jimmy S. Barstow Jr. was introduced to Baba at the Stokes' house. Unexpectedly, Baba liked the American boy very much and later expressed his wish that Jimmy stay with him for 2 weeks. It was not possible due to the child's schooling, but the boy did come to visit Baba again at Harmon on the 19th and for a third time at the Stokeses on the day Baba departed. The passport and visa work was done on the 16th. Mary Anton had a private interview with Baba on the morning of the 17th, during which she poured out her feelings of love and offered her services as a writer in Baba's cause. Baba was pleased with her dedication and service, and accepted a copy of her book, Promised Land, in a letter to Alice Green dated November 24th. Um, Mary wrote, before we get to that, there's a footnote about the book. The Promised Land is an autobiograph- autobiographical account of a young Russian's immigrant's journey to America. So, in a letter that she wrote to Alice Green, this Mary Anton, she wrote, Baba's face when I made my supreme confession to him was burned into my heart for eternity. And there was an evening when we were all with Baba in silence, more holy than ever was the silence of an empty cathedral. And what I saw that evening revealed to me the origin of the familiar motifs of much of Christian sacred art. Of that evening, I have not spoken except in shy allusion, even to those who shared in it. Wherever bonds so closely knit in so short a time as these bonds that hold us together, who have shared the brief first week of Baba's presence, the communion of those holy hours in his presence, nearer, dearer than sisters and brothers of the flesh, the brotherhood of Baba's own. Norino is one of the founders of the International Theater Arts Institute in Brooklyn, where she taught acting. And there's a footnote. One of Norina's early pupils was Louis Nevelson, who would become one of the most renowned artists of the 20th century. Two of her pupils, Eileen Burns, 17, and Beatrice Graham, met Baba on the 17th morning. Eileen was a shy, timid girl, but Baba appreciated her sincerity and the depth of her feelings for him. She sat facing Baba without saying a word for some minutes, a few tears streaming down her face, which Baba wiped. She looked into Baba's eyes, and he asked her what she saw there. The great wisdom beyond, she replied. How do you feel? Baba asked. Words can't explain it. I would like to go back to India with you. I've heard much about retreats in the Himalayas and elsewhere, and even dreamt about them. Baba asked, what is your desire in life? Answer, to create an art form quite different from what is prevalent today. It will be new, novel, and natural. Baba encouraged her. Yes, you will inspire others to dance with joy It will be full of divine inspiration through your love. Do you also act? Even at that young age, Eileen had already appeared professionally in a play the year before. She replied, I did, but I don't want to anymore till I am perfect. Footnote. Eileen Burns became a theater and radio personality. Florence Lee also met Bob on the 17th. Florence gave regular public talks in New York on spiritual topics, billing herself as an instructor of the illumined message. Elizabeth Chapin Patterson, 35, was married to a prominent New York stockbroker named Kenneth Askew Patterson, and she herself was a successful insurance executive. A person of considerable means, she had traveled all over the world, including India, and a venture to the North Pole. Elizabeth had been religiously minded since childhood and was a customer of Malcolm and Jean's bookstore. She first heard about Meher Baba in a letter from Jean. On the morning of 17 November 1931, Jean telephoned Elizabeth to inform her that Baba had arrived and to invite her to meet him. Meher Baba wants to see you, she said. Jean gave her directions to Harmon, and Elizabeth drove there that same day with a friend named Schatz Adams Weicker, with whom she had made previous lunch plans. And we have a footnote here. Schatz Weicker was from a wealthy San Francisco family. Her grandfather, Edson Adams, was one of the founders of the city of Oakland. Her husband, Theodore Weicker Jr., was a prominent Wall Street broker whose father was one of the founders of East Square Drug Company. After a vegetarian lunch at Harmon, each was taken separately upstairs to meet Baba. Meredith led Elizabeth into Baba's room. Elizabeth described her first meeting with her master. Immediately, my feeling was one of recognition. All the way to the far end of the room where he was seated, I tried to recall where I had seen him before. The feeling was one of familiarity, like meeting a friend in a foreign land, a friend whom one had known well since childhood. Only since that earlier period, the appearance has changed. Still, in the process of recalling, I walked over to where Baba was seated, with sandaled feet folded in front of him and the sun shining on his beautiful hair. His remarkable eyes reminded me of a Persian print, but they were so alive with 1,000 dancing fires in them that I realized I had never seen anyone like Baba before. Nowhere in my world travels had I seen his likeness, nor did he seem to fit into any nationality. Upon this close observation, my recognition ceased. But as he smilingly motioned me to sit by him on the orange-colored divan, I still felt completely at ease and at home with him. His silence did not seem strange or awkward. Baba's smile is so disarming and puts one so at ease. I was unconscious of any personality dividing us, either of his or mine. I can only liken being in his presence to being seated by a quiet pool at the base of a great mountain with only the sense of peace in nature, newly born. This feeling has never left me. Footnote. The London Forum, the Occult Review, September 1934, A Modern Meeting of Master and Chela by Elizabeth Patterson. That's where that letter came from. It was also later reprinted in the Meher Baba Journal of February 1940. Baba dictated, Meredith reading the board, that he was pleased to see her. Elizabeth replied, I am trying to remember where I have seen you before. Meredith interjected, remembrance happens to many people who meet Baba for the first time, as they are old contacts from previous lives. Meredith then inquired if Elizabeth had any questions to ask Baba. Elizabeth told Baba about one of her oldest and dearest friends, Elsie Saltus Munns, 34, whom she had known since their boarding school days together. Elsie had met Baba on the 15th in the city, but she was quite ill from a nervous breakdown. Baba assured Elizabeth that there was no need to worry. Elsie would recover. Elizabeth should leave the matter to him and bring Elsie the next time she came to Harmon. Elizabeth, then more relaxed, began to ask questions. Now my many questions tumbled out, she later related, and Baba smiled comprehendingly. I had the impression of receiving his answer directly in my mind, while the communication through his fast moving finger on the board seemed like an echo as it was read out by Meredith. After 10 minutes, Elizabeth's initial interview was over. She shook hands with Baba. I left so happy that on descending the stairs, my feet did not seem to touch them, and I felt as light as joy itself. Elizabeth had come only for the master's blessing, but upon seeing Baba, she was caught. By simply coming into Baba's physical contact, Elizabeth once said, I gained life. 3 days later, Schatzweiger called to ask Elizabeth to return to Harmon. She agreed and brought Elsie with her. And a footnote says, Elsie Saltus Munns was the daughter of Edgar Saltus, an acclaimed 20th century author who became a theosophist. From the very first day of Baba's arrival in America, each of those staying at the Harmon Retreat was called individually for 3 minutes to sit in silence with the master. Invariably, tears would well up from inside them, and many felt the atmosphere pervaded with bliss. About those rare moments with Baba, Malcolm recalled, for 1, 2, or 3 minutes at a time, we would be silent with him. In those periods of silence, we touched a depth in our inner being which we had never reached before. Tears of quiet ecstasy flowed from our eyes. Those precious moments, crowned with the gift of tears welling up mysteriously from depths we had never plumbed before, are unforgettable. While we were pervaded with bliss, our hearts dilated until they seemed as if they would burst the bonds of the body. A tap on his alphabet board recalled us to the fleeting world of time and space, to pick up again the thread of cause and effect and weave our individual patterns on the loom of change. I had never in my life taken orders graciously from anyone, yet Baba's slightest wish was like a sacred trust, an inescapable command. And this before I was converted to the idea of master-disciple relationship. To Jean, who perhaps was worried that she wasn't feeling more of Baba's love, Baba said on the 17th, don't bother about the heart or mind being dry or otherwise. It is better to be dry as the mind and heart are to be emptied of all impurities and refilled with the new flow of divine love. That evening, all were called to Baba's room and sat in silent meditation around Baba for 10 minutes. Chanji characterized such sessions as the lovers being given a spiritual injection. And indeed, after a few minutes, many swooned as if from its effects. During his stay, after explaining some spiritual points to the group, Baba had advised, before sleeping, the last thought in your mind should be of me. Then you may go to sleep. On Tuesday night, 17 November 1931, Meredith came to Malcolm's room and again conveyed Baba's message that he wished everyone to meditate on him just before going to sleep. Malcolm was still dubious about the master-disciple relationship and vowed not to accede to the request. However, as Malcolm drifted into sleep, his last conscious thought was about Baba. What happened next is best described in his own words. It must have been about midnight that I awoke from sleep with tears pouring from my eyes and a realization in my mind of Meher Baba's true nature and mission. I have never been able to put this into words. As the perfect master Kabir has said, it can never be told with the words of the mouth. It can never be written on paper. Baba had revealed to me his universal form, as Krishna revealed to Arjuna. and with the revelation went all my reservations. I capitulated. I knew what Baba was. I knew what his mission was. I knew it was my destiny to serve him. Okay, I'll pass the reading here, Mona.
Yeah, thank you, Marvin. During a conversation the next morning after breakfast, Baba predicted that another world war would break out. The war is a necessary prelude to my manifestation and the subsequent birth of a new, better world. The group questioned Baba concerning this, and as the discussion was ending, Malcolm entered the room. Baba embraced Malcolm and asked with a twinkle in his eye if he had slept well. Malcolm nodded and said, Baba, why don't you reveal yourself to everyone as you revealed yourself last night to me? Then there would be no need of wars. Baba smiled and embraced Malcolm again. Baba's simple instruction about remembering him before going to sleep gave rise to similar elevating experiences among those at Harmon. Jean reported she felt radiant with energy pouring into her all day. Baba had told her to rest in her room on the 18th, where she said she felt Baba with her all the while and that she could see Baba with the eyes open or shut. After one such experience, Mary said to Baba, You are the Jesus, the Lord of the new creation. Baba nodded in the affirmative and replied, Yes, I am He. Meanwhile, other visitors arrived to meet the master, a well known public figure. Harry Barnhart was the organizer and conductor of the predominantly Black New York community chorus and a friend of the Scholastics. Barnhart, 57, had a keen interest in ESP and had some psychic abilities, apparently, as from childhood. He could accurately read people's minds. He had come to see Baba on 11th November and returned a week later on the 18th with his wife to stay at Harmon for 2 days. Barnhart related that he had tried to read Baba's mind but found it strangely blank. During this meeting on the 18th, Barnhart asked Baba, How are you? Are you treated well here? I find that many of those that come here don't understand you, and I don't like the disrespectfully way they treat you. I mean, I don't like the way they treat you, and in brackets, disrespectfully. People here are very peculiar. They don't understand, they hesitate, they doubt. Next page, please. Thank you. Many have come to America from India, these spiritual teachers, but have done nothing. You're the only one I know of who has done something to enlighten the atmosphere here. I feel it. I understand it. I feel the power flowing from you. There are tremendous forces working here, and something terrible is coming. Nobody knows who you are and what you are here for and what you're doing. but I do. Thank you very much for helping me. I'm ready to work in your service at any moment. The critic lecturer and radio personality Edgar White Burrell came to Harmon on the 18th, as did the stage actress Anna Constant and the novelist and playwright Zona Gale 57. Footnote. Footnote, Marvin. I can't see it, so I can't read it. It's that one only after 57. Above after Zona Gale 57. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I was muted. Zona Gale was the first woman to win the Pulitzer Prize for drama.
Okay. Another prominent individual who would have a lifetime contact with the master was Nadia Tolstoy, the daughter-in-law of Count Leo Tolstoy, the Russian author of War and Peace. Nadia, 48, was living in the area with her husband,
Ilya.
Ilya Olaya. She was a Russian immigrant who had studied music at the University of Petrograd and spoke several languages, interested in mystical literature and esoteric philosophy. Nadia was a sincere seeker of truth, but merely reading books had not satisfied her, and she was in search of a living master. When her friends Malcolm and Jean wrote to her of Meher Baba's visit, she came to Harmon for his darshan on Thursday, 19th November 1931, with a friend named Martha Henshire. Footnote.
In 1930, Nadine and her husband were living on the City College campus just down the street from President Robinson's house. So she most likely knew the Robinsons also. Martha Henschel was a young German immigrant nurse.
Thank you. No sooner had she set eyes on Baba than she exclaimed, "My search is over." Nadia Tolstoy was later nicknamed Nadine by Baba. Footnote.
I'm sorry, am I muted here? No. Okay, Baba changed Nadia's name to Nadine when she came to India to distinguish her from his cousin Naja.
Okay, thank you. The following is her account of her first meeting. As I climbed the steps of his upper room, I remember chanting, "Oh." I entered the room, stretched on the couch at the far side of his room was that mysterious, long expected being, the divine enigma, the true one, simple, light, thin, small, sparkling, and youthful, so unpretentious, but strangely mysterious and clear. He had an almost boyish look, but gazing from high and afar, unfathomably deep, yet smiling with pure light in the shining eyes. With pure light in his shining eyes, impenetrable, impersonal transparency, purity. He reminded me of something, of somebody I knew far off, but could not catch the vision of. I felt as if he were challenging my inner memory. His whole posture and atmosphere demanded, can't you remember? Don't you remember me from the past? Next page. I felt, sorry, just one second, I lost the page. I felt he was my life, my resurrection. Baba spelled on the board, you have been waiting for me for a long time, and now I have come. I will help you. Nadine started to tell Baba about herself, but he interrupted. I know all, and simply repeated, I will help you. Nadine had been practicing certain spiritual disciplines, Kriya Yoga, under Swami Yogananda. Baba explained to her with a very serious look, it is not for the West, not for you. He then asked her to sit silently with him for a few minutes. The following is Nadine's recollection. During the short meditation with Baba, I knew he was helping me, reading me all the time. I felt his deep seeing eyes beyond that which we can see, reading the open book of me, working within me. I knew he was my master. His immediate recognition of my soul created a feeling of absolute confidence. Comforted, I already knew that he was the true one. Who knows? Who can help? He was like the shining sun that we do not question. He simply and naturally entered into my life and into my hidden being. As I departed, suddenly it became clear that he was Krishna, his happy, serene appearance, and all his mannerisms, and something undefinable that I seemed to know conveyed this. The truth of his loving understanding, the immediacy of direct response given with so much love and practical instructions that he gave me to follow have been a gift of God to me, setting my heart at peace. I had an absolute confidence that now my path was found and the Supreme Guru was here. Nadine, Elizabeth, and Norina bowed at Meher Baba's feet without hesitation and dedicated their lives in his service. A moment's sight of their beloved opened their hearts to hear his song. Each noted, few words were said, but Baba's shining countenance began conversing with their hearts. This talk by sight is extraordinary, and only those who see, who recognize him, can comprehend it. Words have no power to express what was experienced. They fall away like hollow shells before such splendor. Kitty Davy's sister, May Clues, who was living in Canada, also came to see Baba on the 19th, as did Mrs. L. H. Beckyland. Footnote.
Leo Beckeland was a chemist and the inventor of Bakelite, the first synthetic plastic.
The local host, Margaret Mayo, arrived at Harmon the next day. Dear Rosalie, would you like to read?
No, I'm in a pass today because I'm just listening. I'm in a process of moving.
All right. Thank you.
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. Mahu, would you like to read?
Okay, sure. So I start from Baba had or
Yes.
From page, yeah.
okay. Page 1320, year 1931. Baba had selected certain individuals from the list of scheduled appointments when he ordered Malcolm and Norina to approach about donations for his work in India. Norina did not hesitate, but Malcolm was uneasy about the prospect and thought, quote, to solicit money from our friends as soon as they have met Baba seems in bad taste. It's extremely embarrassing, end quote. Seeing Malcolm disturbed, Baba explained to him, quote, it is not the money that is important, but that you obey me implicitly without hesitation, as Arjuna obeyed Krishna when Krishna told him to slaughter his relatives. End quote. Malcolm summed up the hectic period of Harmon. Baba, whom we expected would spend most of his time in cloistered contemplation, had proved a veritable dynamo of intense activity. Instead of seeing a few people each day, as we had been led to anticipate, he was granted interviews from early morning until late at night. Visitors from all over the United States and Canada poured through the house. Letters, telegrams, cables, and telephone calls sped to and from all parts of the world. Our hospitality was constantly being augmented, more housing for additional guests who arrived from distant places and needed shelter, more and more food for those who had accepted the invitation always extended to every visitor to stay for lunch or dinner. Meals were for 20, 25, 30 people, prepared on a wood stove that sometimes worked and sometimes balked. He was silent, but not even a cyclone could have been more active or, in a way, more devastating. Men and women came out of Baba's room after their 5 or 10 minutes interviews with this speechless being from India, so exalted that they wanted nothing for the moment but to be left alone with their experiences. A friend of Kath Gardner's was a Norwegian-born actress, Asta Fleming, Asta Fleming Case, 37, who lived in Boston. Footnote.
For a time, Asta Fleming toured Europe,
Playing
playing the leading role of the Madonna in Max Reinhardt's production of The Miracle, the same role for which Narina had become famous.
Okay. Asta had seen Baba in a dream 2 years before, and she invited him to Boston. Baba went there on Saturday, 21st November 1931. Kat drove a car from Harmon with Baba. Jean sitting next to him and made clothes. Chanji and Ali went in a car driven by Julian Lamar. Malcolm also accompanied them. Several times during the drive, Baba covered himself with a shawl or cape to do his inner work. The group stayed at the Wyndham Hotel in Boston. Footnote.
Hotel Wyndham was located at the intersection of Commonwealth and Dartmouth Avenues. Part of the building burned down in 1972. 9 firefighters were killed in the worst firefighting tragedy of the city's history.
Wow. The next day, Baba went to see Asta Fleming Case at her home at 279 Newbury Street. Next page, 1321. The woman had faced opposition from her husband, the occultist Paul Foster Case, and others, and Baba urged her, quote, "Continue thinking of me and do not worry. I am with you," end quote. He promised to help her and her husband. Baba was driving around the city for an hour and then returned to the hotel at 11 a.m. Meanwhile, at the hotel, there were about 25 Bostonians waiting to meet the master, including Chester Green and Nicholas Bessarabov, 37, who, as a young man, was responsible for having P.D. Ouspensky's work translated into English. And there's a footnote.
Bessarabov worked at the Boston Museum of Fine Arts and wrote extensively on musical instruments.
Okay, continued. Courtney Baylor, 61, a religious psychotherapist, head of the Emmanuel movement, and an expert on alcoholism, met Baba that day, as did George W. Coleman, a Boston businessman who had founded the Ford Hall Forum of Free Public Lectures. Another invitee was a Quaker philanthropist, Mrs. Edward Sohair Welsh. Baba explained to all about the oneness and indivisibility of the soul, emphasizing to them, and quote, "There is nothing else except God. He is holy in everyone, and you do not realize what he is doing for you," end quote. Baba also met various people at the Wyndham Hotel on the afternoon of the 22nd from 2 to 5 p.m. These included Max and Anna Geisy, the astrologer author, Dane Rudhyar, 36, and the composer Williams Arms Fisher. And there's a footnote.
Max Geisy had translated and edited some of Rudolf Steiner's work from German to English. He knew Meredith Starr and had visited the East Chalicombe retreat in 1929 or 30, and was also an acquaintance of Paul Brunton.
Okay. Continued. Richard Meyer, the person who had first told Malcolm about Baba, was also present and commented to Baba, "Only you know how you suffer." End quote. In reply, Baba spelled out, quote, "I am eternally happy, blissful, yet I feel compassion for all who suffer and help them through my knowledge and power. Thus, my mercy is my suffering." End quote. A monk from India named Swami Paramamanda, 47, arrived to meet Baba, accompanied by his niece and 3 of his students. Paramananda had come to America in 1906 as the youngest disciple of Swami Vivekananda, and 3 years later founded the Vedanta Center in Boston. During the interview, Paramananda invited Baba to visit Ananda Ashram in Southern California, a retreat he had established as an extension of the Boston Vedanta Center in 1923 on 120 acres of land. Baba replied, quote, "It is not possible on this trip. When I visit America again after 6 months, maybe I can." End quote. The niece also requested that Baba come to California, promising to prepare Indian food for him. Baba smiled, gesturing, quote, "After 6 months." End quote.
You, Jay, would you be reading today? Okay. There's someone on the telephone. Would you like to read today?
I think that's Marilyn.
Yeah, that's Marilyn. Let's see if she hears us.
Marilyn, would you like to read today? Okay. Fine. Mahu, you want to do one more page, or should I?
Yeah, I can
Marvin,
continue and then we can rotate. All right.
Yeah.
So page 1322, 1931, after Paramananda. Paramananda had brought a bottle of honey for the master, and after he presented it to him, Baba dictated, quote, "There is nothing but for one, infinite existence, and I am one with it. I continuously enjoy eternal bliss and see myself in everything and in everyone." And then another quote, "Mere intellectual conviction is not enough. Reality is a matter of illumination, inner sight, and experience. All this is within you, but for that, death is necessary to become dead to Maya in order to be born in reality." End quote. After hearing this, Paramananda put the several books which he had written about the spiritual knowledge on a nearby table. The monk had intended to present them to Baba, but realized the foolishness of his idea he said, quote, even though I have philosophy and may be able to explain things to others, all these books are worthless piece of paper unless infinity is experienced, end quote. Humbly he said, quote, this I have not attained. I require a Sadguru like you, Baba, and your grace. I bow before you. Push me forward, Baba, end quote. Paramananda then prostrated himself before Baba, who placed his hand on the man's head, blessing him. The monk then turned to his students and said, quote, one can never attain spiritual perfection without a guru. Meher Baba, being a perfect master, finds the content of these books playthings. What we discuss with the intellect, this blessed Baba is constantly experiencing, end quote. Paramananda was an accepted spiritual leader of several hundred American Vedantaists. By declaring this, his followers understood the spiritual status of Meher Baba. Thomas Watson and his wife Elizabeth met Baba at 3 p.m., but Watson was unresponsive. Quote, Baba didn't have the slightest effect on my emotions as he did when I first met him in England, end quote. Watson noted in his diary, about Malcolm, Jean, and Mary Antine's devotion, Watson wrote, quote, they are perfectly infatuated with Baba. And they say that they all who meet him have the same emotional reaction. It seems like hypnotism, end quote. Kath Gardner wanted to turn over to the master her 100-acre wooded estate in Greenfield, New Hampshire, to use as a retreat. The property was near to her Hancock farm when Malcolm and Jean had stayed. Baba liked the idea and was driving there about 80 miles to see both places on Monday, 23rd November 1931. It was a beautiful spot surrounded by mountains and meadows. The Hancock property had an old farmhouse with 10 rooms.
Okay, we're gonna have a new reader.
I can read some now.
Okay.
Starting where, although
Yes.
the West learns to sing, 1931. Although the original idea was to create a center there for Baba, the plan never materialized. Footnote.
Gardner gifted the Greenfield property to Baba in 1931, and other than Myrtle was the only land that Meher Baba ever owned in America. 2 years later, however, the land was given back to her. Further details are to be found in Glow International, February 1996.
Returning to Boston in the afternoon, Baba boarded the SS George Washington at 5 p.m., taking an overnight boat ride back to New York. They arrived the next morning at 10 a.m. and stayed at the Astor Hotel on Broadway, where Norina had booked rooms. It was an expensive hotel, frequented by a wealthy and influential clientele, yet which other guests could be more distinguished. Nevertheless, to arrange his stay, Norina had to use her influence with the proprietors, who were reluctant to accommodate, quotes, a silent Indian master, end quotes. The rector, chief pastor of St. Bartholomew's Church, Reverend Dr. Robert Norwood, came to see Baba at the Astor on 24th November. Norwood, 57, was a well-known Canadian poet who held a doctorate in theology, a devout soul in search of truth. Norwood had written extensively and was a dynamic preacher, quotes, who brought large crowds to the church week after week, end quotes. Footnote.
One of Norwood's books, titled The Man Who Dared to Be God, is described as a very human view of Jesus Christ and his life.
Although Norwood held a prominent position at St. Bartholomew's, he was disillusioned with organized religion and had little faith in any sect, dogma, or doctrine. Baba gave Norwood a long interview, and the following is their conversation. Quote from Baba, "Love is the only real religion. People are now fed up with dogma, doctrines, and principles. They want something real, which explanations can never give. They must feel truth, see truth, and experience truth. Only then can one feel oneself in harmony with everything and everyone. Only then can one, though living in the world, not be of it. I am eternally happy. I see myself in everyone and everything," end quotes, Baba. Norwood asked, quotes, "Do you preach any specific precepts, or do you belong to any particular creed?" End quotes. Baba answers, "None, absolutely. Religions, caste, sects, dogmas, creeds, doctrines, and rituals are all hindrances in the path of truth. Truth is all pervading and infinite," end quotes. Norwood asked, "Is going to church of any help?" End quotes. Quoting Baba, "Yes, to a certain extent, but not much though. The church that advocates and nourishes sectarianism renders no help. Truth belongs to all churches, temples, and mosques. To attain the truth, no obstacle should be put in anyone's way, such as present-day religions and cults do." End of Baba talking.
Okay, I think we're going to stop here. Oh, why don't you just finish
Oh,
up
yeah,
about
let's
this
finish
part?
that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Norwood said, quotes, "Yes, it is true. At first, I was active in a church, but because I was in search of a religion of the heart, I left it. Now, religion and sectarianism do not appeal to me. I have always been sure that if there is anything higher than religion, as it is preached and practiced today, it is love for others," end quotes. Baba continued, quotes, "Exactly. I frequently repeat the same thing. I am preparing a way for people so that they will be able to live a life of truth. There is no religion higher than love. Love is the only way leading to truth and God realization. Mind and intellect provide only superficial understanding. It is dry knowledge. One must see God and experience Him. That is real. Then union can be experienced. It takes a long time. It is a long way off. The shortest, quickest way to the realization of truth is through love. And this is Norwood talking, quotes, I am glad we agree. May I ask a few more questions? And Baba says, certainly. And Norwood says, what do you think of Gandhi? Baba replies, a fine man and a very good soul. He has promised to come and stay with me for spiritual progress after he retires from politics. End quotes. This is Norwood concurring. That is what Gandhi needs. He has labored hard and suffered much for the Indian people. He is too simple and trustworthy a man for politics. Norwood continues, what is your opinion of the Theosophists, Annie Besant and Charles Ledbetter? Norwood asked. Baba replies, they have done some good work, but there is still much to be done. They are somewhat advanced souls, but at a certain stage of advancement, without the guidance and help of a master, hostile forces are created, resulting in delusion. It all becomes a jumble, and there is confusion. Then Norwood says, they write and speak too much. But you, Baba, are the epitome of beauty. End quote. When he came out of his interview, Norwood remarked to Chanji, quotes, I felt that I was in the presence of a powerful being and my vanity was affected, end quotes. A few days later, Baba dictated this message to be conveyed to Robert Norwood. Tell him that I have said that he will know me, that I have seen many, all of whom were deeply impressed, but that in him I found one who could do my work to a great extent. Tell him, Norwood, that he should not misunderstand me now. He was frankly told the present need for money. And as the work is for the upliftment of humanity, for their spiritual illumination, he, being already spiritually advanced, should be the first to do all he could. This is good to finish it. By his first interview, he has known me clearly and surely enough not to be confused. He should rest assured that I will come back and speak and stay to make all mankind realize by actual experience the one infinite self which is in all. Footnote.
After receiving this message, Norwood sent a reply which indicated that his understanding was limited. Chanji noted in his diary Dr. Norwood's attitude, rather misunderstanding. Others too. Baba then said he would do his work in a different way. Robert Norwood died in September 1932, 10 months after meeting Baba.
Two women, Dorothy Norris and her friend Juliana Day.
From there.
Oops. Recording? How did that happen?